what's going on. In a few minutes, we're going to have, I guess, minutes from the Fed, which, I- are probably, well, they certainly won't take into account what just happened in the last 30 minutes because, whenever they met, they would not have known that Trump was going to literally do a complete 180 on tariffs. And for those who haven't been keeping up, I guess at midnight, all of these, his whole package of tariffs, went into effect. And we've been going back and forth with China. I'm not even sure where we are right now. I want to say, I think we put tariffs on China 150% or just some ridiculous number. One thing I was looking at in the course of doing my presentation, um, I mean, this is like beyond Smoot Hawley. And, history buffs will know. So the Smoot Hawley tariffs were enacted, pardon me, during Herbert Hoover's um, administration. And up until now, that has been viewed as really, just the most dreadful piece of policy that's ever come out of Washington. and and so I guess Trump basically has said, "Hold my damn beer," because this just blows a hole in everything. We've never seen really anything like this. And I think the person that I have heard, and by the way, I will get to the bond market in just a second because that's really an essential part of this conversation. But Larry Summers, who I've actually been in the past somewhat critical of. And for those who don't know, Larry Summers was Treasury Secretary. Um, I, I'm trying to remember, was it the Obama administration or the Clinton administration? One of them. Doesn't matter. He's now, professor at Harvard, economist, well respected, no question, but he's also a jerk. Um, at any rate, he made a comment, and I'll post it because he uses a word and it's escaping me now. It was a word I had to actually look up. Basically, what it means is this: he it is when you go to the hospital to get cured of something and you end up getting a disease while you're there. Be it Clinton. Thank you. Um, and so I want to say it's something like ionometric or something, just a really unusual word. But the point is, he compared what is happening now with the economy to you going to the hospital to, I don't know, have an operation, and while you're there, you get a virus and it kills you. He's basically saying, the government is supposed to be the entity that brings stability to the markets, and it's actually the cause of every single thing that we've got going on right now. And the other thing I heard him say, I believe this was yesterday, he was being interviewed by Casey Hunt, and he said, within basically the span of an hour, Trump basically got out there and said, whatever he, who knows what it was, but it's essentially responsible for the market, at least on that particular day, losing something like, I think, $3 trillion in just in value or wealth, however you want to look at it. And his comment, it really kind of set me back. And again, I'll post the video as soon as I'm off. Um, he said, "But the stock market isn't the real world. I mean, it is a reflection of companies and sentiment and all these different things." He said, "So if you take what the stock market has lost on that particular day, say 3 trillion, and extrapolate it back out into the broader, the real world that we all live in, right?" He said it's really closer to the economy losing $30 trillion. And I never really thought about it like that. So this is what we're dealing with, something, and I've said this previously. I was around, I mean, I was actually a bond salesman in on Black Monday in 1987. I was around when long-term capital went under, or almost went under. Um, I moved to New York just in time for the internet bubble to burst in 9/11, right? And then, of course, I left right after, a few years after the housing crisis. I left. I guess the housing crisis was, or the great financial crisis, however you want to look at it. Um, that was in '08, yeah, '08 and '09, and I left New York in 2012. So I've seen some blowups. All of those things, and even the response to them, or responses to them, however adequate or not they may be, they weren't the cause. Okay. So Herbert Hoover did not cause the Great Depression. He made it worse because of Smoot-Hawley. But what we've got here is basically, in my mind, it's the equivalent of a person setting their house on fire or your house on fire, and then showing up as a fireman saying, "Hey, I got it. Let me put it out." Just honestly, it's like out of the matrix of anything you could have expected. And I don't think, well, I know nobody who voted for Trump expected this. They probably thought there were going to be somebody who could talk him off of the ledge. And now what's happened today, of course, we had all these tariffs go into effect. And now in the last 30 minutes, we've got the 90-day pause, which is what Bill Ackman, who is a hedge fund manager for a company called Pershing Square, and he's been screaming for the last 2 or 3 days, we need this 90-day pause. And literally on X, within minutes of that pause, he just tweeted, "Thank you." so so the market clearly was looking for something to hang on to. Now, to get back to someone asked a question about bonds. So this morning, and actually, I think it's been going on for the last couple of days, but it really ramped up overnight. Which and I'll explain how the bond market and the equity markets. That's my wife over there off stage. I'm in my kitchen, y'all. So let's not get it twisted. I'm not famous. I don't have a I don't I don't have a set or anything. I'm just sitting here at my kitchen table just talking shit. So anyway, so the bond market and the stock market, um, there's a converse relationship. So the when the stock market goes up, typically bond prices will go in the opposite direction. Okay. Um, the bond markets, or the credit markets, if you will, are a reflection of more of economic what's going on in the economy. And this is just my perception of it. And the stock market, certainly a reflection on the economy, but more specific to companies and sectors and so forth, right? So when the stock market craters like it has been doing for the last week, um, the reaction from bonds is supposed to be um, prices going up, bonds becoming more attractive as kind of a safe haven, because um, they react. Bonds go up when you um, are anticipating a recessionary environment, right? And so that is why it makes sense, if you think about it. When we go into a recession, what's normally what the Fed would do is lower interest rates, right? Because when you go into a recession, typically you do not have inflation, right? It's either you have just stagnant prices, or prices, demand going down. And I'm not going to get too deep, because honestly, I'm not a economist. I'm just speaking as a person who spent, I don't know, 15 years trading bonds, and about the same length of time running a algorithmic trading desk. So I've been on both sides of this equation. Now, so the Fed basically comes in and cuts interest rates, and that is to push us out of the recession. And bonds benefit from that. I mean, that's where you want to be, because if you're in the bond market, you're almost kind of praying for a recession, because bonds take off in price and convert. And the way it works is, as the prices go up, the yield or the interest rate on a bond goes down. So, if you have a 10-year treasury trading at face value, it's a 5% treasury, right? At face value, the yield or the interest rate you would receive is 5%. If the price goes down, then you get more of. Has happened is, instead of bonds behaving like they should when the stock market is in free fall, bonds are also going down in price, meaning the yield is going up. That's not supposed to happen. So why is that? Now, we don't really know exactly. I posited this morning when I wrote about it that it could be that some countries were starting to unload U.S. Treasury bonds. That's one thought. Um, the other is that there are all kinds, in all these different instruments we're talking about. There are all kinds of strategies that people, we call them a trade. So it might be a credit default trade, where you're selling one thing, you're buying something else. There are all kinds of different things you could be doing, and maybe I'll write about it, but you don't even necessarily care. The point is, O'Donna, absolutely. I'll get to that too. O'Donna asked, "Do I think he's manipulating the markets for me?" I All I know is this: Howard Lutnick essentially is giving stock recommendations. He's the Commerce Secretary. I mean, WTF? I won't say it here, but what? I mean, the last night Trump was giving a speech. I didn't catch exactly where it was, but he's basically saying you really ought to be thinking about buying right now. Come on. This is not what the president or the commerce secretary is supposed to be doing. I don't even do that. I'm not giving recommendations of what people should do with their money. My purpose really is just so folks kind of, to the extent that I have a understanding of this stuff, I'm just sharing it. Now, I can't tell you what to do with your 401k, right? Nor should I be. I'm not in that business, but I do know a thing or two about, what's happening right now. So anyway, bonds are just, the U.S. Treasury market is considered, and what I'm saying, up until now, the U.S. Treasury market is considered the safest place for money to be on earth, for money to be. So the only two times I can think where that has not totally held true is during the pandemic. I think there was like a point, when everything was just going haywire, where, but it wasn't because people didn't think the US Treasury market was a safe place. It was because people didn't know what to do, and they just started liquidating their treasury bonds, just raising cash, because, cash is always king. But the problem that we've got right now is, because of the way, tariffs on 1 minute. I mean, think about it. We've gone from the worst tariff policy that anybody's ever seen, like at midnight, and now here we are with a 90-day pause. I mean, what the hell? Who? So all of these people that just 24 hours ago he said were cheating us, well, now he's saying it's really just China. Yesterday, um, one of the senators there was a hearing yesterday, and think of how crazy this is. We actually have a we don't have tariffs coming our way from Australia, but we imposed a 10% tariff on them, which is a penalty, right? And they couldn't explain why it was they did it. It was sort of like, well, we're just putting tariffs on everybody. That's craziness. And so, even though for right now the market's up, I don't know, a couple of thousand points, don't think this is over, because the problem that Trump has created right now is that nobody knows what's what. Nobody, how, if you're running a company, a small business, are you really going to jump out and start hiring a bunch of people right now? If you're a bank, how do you lend money? If you don't know, if you don't know what bonds are going to do. I should have mentioned this. So the 10-year treasury bond, everybody that's got a mortgage, that's what it's pegged to. That's how they decide what your mortgage should be. Um, a couple of hours ago, mortgage rates, I'm pretty sure, broke 7%, or at least hit 7%. They haven't been that high since, I don't know, February, or, you know. So this is an indication of just total uncertainty. You got, this is earnings season. You got companies like Delta, they aren't even giving guidance. Because they don't know. They don't know what to expect. So any company out there that's giving forward-looking guidance is just, they're just making up something, because there's no way they can know. These 90-day tariffs might not last a week. We just don't know. Lillian says, I think somebody got to Trump big time. I'll tell you who got to him. Bill Ackman. Bill Ackman was asking for this, I don't know, Monday, a week ago. And he's not the only one, but he's been very, very loud about it. And not for nothing, we've got a huge tariff on Vietnam. Well, Nike. I'm pretty sure it's Vietnam or Thailand. I can't remember exactly where Nike makes their shoes, but it's not America. So you got to think about Vietnam, China, Thailand, those three. That is why Apple is just been getting destroyed in terms of market value. And then, of course, I hate to say it now, in terms of who got to him, you know, Elon Musk might have had something to do with it, but I'm pretty sure it's outside of the White House. I mean, yesterday you had, in addition to um, Larry Summers, you know, you had Jamie Dimon saying basically the base case right now for determining what's up with the economy is recession. You had Larry Fink from BlackRock saying, I'm talking to a bunch of CEOs. Everybody says we're in a recession. I think that was 2 days ago. Um, all the, you know, Goldman, Morgan Stanley, all these different investment banks, global investment banks, they're all basically adjusting their projections downward for the economy. I think now it's probably a consensus that we're looking at, you know, if we're not already in a recession, and, you know, the way it works, by the way, is they don't really tell us we're in a recession until we're kind of almost out of it, and they're looking back going, oh yeah, that was a recession back there a year ago. So but people pretty well can know something like this you just don't skate through. Okay. And John, you're absolutely right. So I guess we should stop listening to Jamie Dimon, is the moral of that story. Jamie Dimon said we needed to get over it. I think it was just a couple of days after inauguration. He said, you know, tariffs were good for national security. That didn't age well at all. So, you know, what you have to keep in mind too with a lot of these guys, it's what we, you know, they're basically talking their book. You know, if they are in a position to benefit from, you know, one way or the other, that's kind of the way that they're going to couch their comments. Okay. But I mean, that's just kind of where we're at. I mean, I've been kind of going on for a minute. Some, you know, I think it was yesterday. I've been getting asked a lot of questions about private equity, and I posted something about Joanne's as an example. But just on the topic of private equity, what people should realize and I'm telling you, the bond market, I think, is what scared the hell out of them, right? Because the whole idea was that, oh, we're going to make the dollar cheaper. You know, Trump's been saying that forever. But in the stock market, yeah, it's scary or unnerving. But when you see bonds reacting in the opposite way of what they're supposed to be, of their reaction, what it's supposed to be to the stock market, that's when you're like, okay, what's going on here? And that's when the Fed has to figure out, okay, it's one thing if we got tariffs and they crack the stock market, and maybe we have stagflation where we have this environment where interest rates are going or inflation is going up. And guys, it's it's for sure that at least Trump is okay. When I was running a trading desk, I could not go out in public and start saying things that were going to benefit my firm that weren't true necessarily. Or if I had inside information, I couldn't be going out there just like saying stuff. So to the extent with that in mind, 30 minutes before he did the 90-day pause, he posted on Truth Social telling everybody, y'all stay cool. It's going to be okay. Right? That is market manipulation. You got Howard Lutnick literally saying, y'all need to be buying Tesla at such and such price. It's never going to be cheaper than that. How do you know? I mean, that is market manipulation. But that is a side show compared to the other thing they're doing over here, which is driving the market into the ground so they can use tariffs to generate revenue so that they can offset this gigantic tax bill they're trying to pass as we speak. Y'all, I'm not kidding. There is more money in that for billionaires than anything they're going to make trying to, buy back their stock or buy some stock cheap or, yeah. I mean, okay, yeah, they do that, but that's just kind of like the side hustle. The real hustle, I'm telling you, is this because okay, they're trying to get the votes right now. Republicans don't even have the votes because, crazy as some of them are, there's some Republicans that do not like deficits. And it's these far right guys, and they will burn the whole house down over it. Okay. And they're like, I heard 15. Well, Republicans can't afford to lose what? I guess, what's their margin now? 6, 7, something? They can't do that. So with these guys, and again, when I do the wrap up of this and put out a recording, I'll put some links to the latest, things I've written about this. But um, I'll say it again: almost 5 trillion just for extending the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. It's like 4.9 trillion with a T. Um, you've got they're talking about part of the package is no tax on Social Security, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. Okay, they're playing three-card money, folks. You know anybody working for tips that's paying taxes? I don't. You know anybody? Well, and the overtime thing is while they are saying no taxes on overtime, on the other side of the spectrum, they're working to basically allow employers to negotiate what constitutes overtime. So, they're saying no tax on overtime, and they're also trying to get rid of overtime. So these guys, I'm telling you, if you ever been to the big city, they're like that guy that's out there with those cups, just moving them around, and you don't know, you don't know which one the ball is under. That's what's up with these dudes. And so, I'm just trying to make it as plain as day. When you add the impact to the deficit of almost 5 trillion in a tax cut, plus these other things, $9 trillion impact to the deficit. Okay. And that is what is going on. That's the big picture. All this other stuff is just the sideshow to distract us and make us wonder, whoa, keep you all, unstable. You don't know what to expect next. Okay. So um, I I believe they're going to probably get this pushed through Congress, this tax cut. And, you know, they're willing to do it, but think about it. All we have heard from them for the last number of years is the deficit. Oh, the deficit. Oh my God, the deficit. And look what they're about to do. So there are some Republicans that are not down for it. And I'm sure they're going to be getting calls from Trump. He'll threaten them with something or promise them something. Who knows? But just watch. I mean, even I'm out here agreeing with Rand Paul. I've never agreed. I think maybe in a couple of other instances, but rarely do I agree with Rand Paul. And he just called it out. He said this whole tariff thing is crazy because their their mechanism or their formula for determining who's an offender and who's not is really based on like our like trade deficit with a given country, right? So think about this. Countries like Vietnam are always going to sell us more stuff than they buy from us. They're too small. They don't have the GDP to buy as much from us as they sell to us. So it's just kind of a joke to expect that. It would be like, and this is the example, Rand Paul gave two examples. He said, I have a trade deficit with my grocery store. I buy a lot of stuff from them. They don't buy anything from me. And the other example was he said, people, you get paid for labor. So if you work at a car dealership, they pay you to work there. They don't expect you to buy an equivalent number of cars from them. It's just like, as a person who was a trader, anytime a trade happens, both sides get something out of it. You're not cheating the other. So if I buy stock at a cheap price, I'm not cheating the guy who sold it to me. That's where the market is. I gave him fair value. So it's just a really asinine way to look at, you know, it's an asinine way. Yeah, and the penguins, come on. How those penguins going what are those penguins gonna buy from us? so so it's just such an asinine approach to just basic economics. If you pose something like that in like economics 101 in college or something, they laugh you out of the room. And we got guys running the country, if not, supposed to be leading the world, and that's their plan. Thank you, Fran. I try to explain. My wife told me my superpower was explaining stuff to people where they could understand it. It's not a superpower. It's just that I'm not that sophisticated. so, so I mean, that's the way I try to write, and that's the way I try to talk. It's just, because a lot of this stuff is really complicated, and I kind of had the good fortune to be in a position to learn a lot of this stuff. So, I guess I'm going to wrap it up here, but I would say, and I probably don't have to tell you folks, we can't get comfortable because this guy, it's just whoever gets to him last gets what they want. And at some point, Peter Navarro is going to be back in the mix. And, we just don't know. We just don't know. Here's something else. I mentioned this before. So all this 90-day pause, we don't really have, compared to China, we don't have like huge trading relationships with um, even the EU. I don't think. I mean, China makes 80% of our toys, y'all. Christmas is coming, and this fool is making toys more expensive, right? I was out this morning and I'm listening to the radio, and Amazon, I believe, has canceled all their orders, of anything from China. So I guess Amazon, and I'm not sure I understand it exactly. Maybe, if some of you deal with Amazon, but apparently what they do is they went out, a lot of their vendors take, I don't know, beach chairs, right? And they make deals with their vendors, I guess, to sell them or buy beach chairs from them. And they have that buying power, so they go out to, I don't know, 100 vendors, and the bottom line is they've canceled all their orders. So what? All these vendors that thought they were going to sell beach chairs to Amazon, I mean, I guess they could try to sue, but good luck with that, right? So they just got to figure out, what do we do with all this stock that we bought that Amazon said they were going to buy? Hmm. You know? So, Leslie, you probably have a better handle, and I hear you. I have tried so hard to not do business with Amazon, and when you live out in the middle of nowhere, it's kind of difficult. Um, so yeah, I mean that's just one thing, and I'm telling you, this guy has really started something. And I want to just go back finally, in closing, this thing with bonds. Keep an eye on it, because to me, it indicates that the rest of the world, America has always been considered in financial terms the safe haven for the rest of the world, right? When everything goes to hell in the handbasket, put your money in U.S. Treasury bills. Well, people are questioning that now because of two things. One, we got a president that's acting like, some dude off of Game of Thrones and Mad King or something, right? Just all these crazy things he's doing. And then you've also got Congress about to just dump $9 trillion worth of debt. So people are like, is America really a good bet? Right? They were talking about refinancing debt, which is default, really. you know, so keep an eye on the bond market. That's going to be interesting, because that is what makes the Fed do something. Edward, I don't know that there's, from what I have been able to see, I don't know that there's any evidence that China is dumping bonds. However, there are all kind of games that China could play. They could start slowly selling their long bonds and buying short-term debt to, maybe they could say, you know what, maybe we don't want to be committed to 10-year bonds. Maybe we just want something real liquid. So, that's a trade that kind of happens. It's not completely like dumping their bonds. Yeah, we also need the debt. The debt ceiling is also part of this whole big package, by the way. So, yeah, and I'm just looking at comments here. It is correct. America has lost something here. Even if all this stops tomorrow, nobody's looking at us the same. I won't say ever again, but for a long, long time, because it's just, how they say, once you lose your reputation, it's damn hard to get it back. Well, that's kind of where we're at right now. So anyway, I'm going to sign off. I've got to catch up on what's going on. I'll probably be making some comments, and I'll get a recorded version of this out. I hope it's helpful. If you guys think it is, and some of the other stuff that I do, which, by the way, if you if you follow me on Notes, I everything I post isn't negative. I kind of like to put a little bit of joy in there at the same time. So, you know, keep your chin up. If this is helpful, think about becoming a paid subscriber, and I'll see you on the other side. Take care.